welcome Jeff Hardy, Senior Vice President, North America Sales.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. For those of you in the back of the room, please feel free to come forward, grab a seat. There's plenty of them sort of interspersed throughout the audience up front as well as in the middle. But first of all, I want to welcome all of you to the 6th annual BMC Exchange here on a beautiful day in sunny Chicago. We're thrilled that you've chosen to spend your time with us here, and we're confident that we've got both a fun and thought-provoking day in store for you. So I'm going to start the day with a quote. The quote comes from Sam Altman, who's the chairman of Y Combinator and the CEO of OpenAI, and what he said is that AI will probably, maybe, most likely lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime, there will be great companies. So I share that quote not to start the day with a message of doom and impending Armageddon. I mean it in quite the opposite regard. We happen to be present at a time where the technology exists to produce amazing things. Sure, the opportunities for unintended disasters or near misses certainly exists, but the opportunity for incredible and positive transformation is unsurpassed at any other time, certainly in my lifetime. And it's evident in the work being done by companies around the world, many of whom are represented here in the room today, and we're thrilled that you've chosen to be with us. Perhaps a bit more optimistically, Harold Chen, who's the head of technology, media, and telecom investing at KKR, who, not coincidentally, owns BMC, published an article back in January of this year in CIO magazine where he talked about this idea that we're on the brink of a coming tsunami of technological innovation that'll dwarf what's occurred over the prior 30 years. I realize that's difficult to comprehend. It certainly is for me because it certainly seems like a great deal has changed in that time frame. But his point is that what preceded today produced the foundational technologies that can be harnessed together, right, to the benefit of you, your company, society, the world at large, to produce paradigm-smashing advancements. So things like ubiquitous mobile and cloud infrastructures, Internet of Things, 5G, AI-driven machine learning, provide us the platforms for incredible innovation in order to build the great companies that Sam Altman was referring to. Now, perhaps what's most relevant to where BMC fits into all this are two main concepts on which what Sam and Harold allude to pretend. Right? The first is that the coming wave won't be due to a single invention. Right? This isn't about the invention of the printing press or the assembly line or the internet. This is about the aggregation and combination of many different capabilities that have evolved and been perfected over the years. And then secondarily, your company's evolution, if not its survival, will depend upon your ability to continue to operate profitably while leveraging technology to transform. So these divergent needs, coupled with the requirement to operate in a hyper-heterogeneous environment, is what BMC is solely focused on, right? The need to run and reinvent your business. And you're going to hear a lot more about that throughout the day today. So, my name is Jeff Hardy. I lead the North American sales organization here at BMC, but today my only role is to serve as your host. So, I'll try to keep things moving along fairly expeditiously, but my goal is that the day is instructive and productive for you as possible. So, if I can answer a question, broker an introduction, set up a meeting, whatever it might be, please track me down, feel free to ask. Feel free to ask any of the other BMC folks in the room here today. We want to make sure that you have a great day, and we'll try to make sure we have as much fun as possible throughout the day today and into the reception later on this evening. So this is the second of 7 global events that we're going to run across 3 continents this year at BMC. And what's so exciting about the BMC exchanges from our standpoint is that this is our opportunity to come to you, to our customers, right? To talk about the challenges and the opportunities that you're faced with every day, to talk about our strategy and where our company's headed, and to give you a perspective on the market that we play in and where we see the technology related to it heading. So as we get started here, I want to run through the morning agenda on the sides. In a moment, we'll be joined by Sar Schwartz, our Chief Marketing Officer here at BMC. Sar's going to talk about how to run and reinvent your business, how to innovate with new technologies and ensure business continuity. He's going to be joined on stage by Trish Weinbrenner from eBay. Trish is going to share a little bit about eBay's cloud innovation journey. And then after that, we'll be joined by two of BMC's business unit presidents that are here with us today, Nayaki Nayar, the president of our digital service operations management business, and Gur Steif, who's the president of our automation business. They'll be on stage to talk a little bit about what's new and exciting at BMC and where we're headed. And they also will be joined by a couple of customers. Denny Gilmore from Walgreens and Chris Haynes from Raymond James will be here to talk a little bit about how BMC is helping to power their business. After that, we'll take a brief intermission, probably about 15 minutes. And when we come back in, we'll be joined by Avi Goldfarb, who's the Ellison Professor of Marketing at the Rotman School of Management, is the first holder of the Rotman Chair in Artificial Intelligence and Healthcare at the University of Toronto. When Avi's done, I'll come back up, talk a little bit about the afternoon, and then we'll break for lunch. I want to take a quick moment to thank our partners and sponsors. Hopefully you've had a minute to visit with some of them as you came in this morning, but they're key both to BMC's success and to events like this. So day to day, they're crucial to our ability to extend value to your organization, and they're instrumental in coordinating and enabling our exchanges. So please help me to recognize our sponsors and partners for their help in creating what promises to be an awesome event. So there will be time throughout the day to meet and understand how each of them might be able to add value to your organization. They're available to you out in the partner pavilion throughout the day. Please make sure you take some time to visit with them whenever you've got a free moment. Please make sure you also download the BMC event app. You were invited to do so via email over the last couple of days. And if you're anything like me, the sender was not completely familiar, so you deleted it. If that happens to be the case, there is a table out by the registration desk that can assist you with tracking it down, downloading it, and putting it on your mobile device. It has some important information, right, relative to the agendas, surveys. There are some gamification elements. There's a lot of great stuff in there. And in the interest of making sure that you have a great day here, I really want to make sure that you have that information at your disposal. Second, please remember to share your tweets with us using the hashtags on the screen. Or post on the BMC app. There are some great incentives this year to share your experiences on your social networks. We'll talk a little bit more about that this afternoon, but please share your thoughts to your favorite social channels as well. Oh, sorry, we're going the wrong way. And lastly, please keep in mind that this event is being recorded both by video. Photos are also being taken. So if you happen to be playing hooky, you called in sick, your spouse asked you to put a coat of paint on the exterior of your house, and instead you're here having an amazing time with us at the BMC Exchange, and you don't want them to know about it, please speak to the registration desk, and we'll make sure that we exclude you from anything like that. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage BMC's Chief Marketing Officer, Sar Schwartz.
Good morning. So in the next hour, we're going to have, first and foremost, customers come on stage and tell you their story and how they run and reinvent their business. We're going to have our partners here as well. We're going to have BMC executives and our techie team come in and talk about technology. But really our intent today is to inspire you guys to start thinking about what you do a little bit differently and implement some of the things you're going to hear about today and make it relevant for your specific job and for your specific responsibility. And what I'd like to start talking about first is kind of a scary and big word, disruption. In the past 5 years, we had experts come in and really smart people from Gartner and all industries stand on stages like this one, and tell you that disruption is the way to go. That if you don't spend an enormous amount of time trying to disrupt your market you're going to fail and die a miserable and slow death. That was the narrative, right? The reality is, all that was fake. That's not true. Today, we know for a fact that most companies will never disrupt their markets in a material way. It'll just never happen. But many companies can thrive and be successful and achieve sustainable growth and a competitive differentiation in lieu of disruption. Because every market is being disrupted, right? And the reality is disrupting markets is really, really hard. It's hard to do. You don't see that very, very often. Even the most successful companies you know only disrupt their markets once in a lifetime, maybe twice. Apple did it 3 times, which is pretty remarkable if you think about the cell phone business, the PC business with tablets, and then the music business with iTunes, right? It's really, really hard to do, and you really, really don't have to do it, right? And in part, disruption is not so much related to technology or being smart. It's really about culture. And not that any of you in the room has ever thought about their company this way, but many companies that have been around for a while have somewhat of an org chart that looks like this. And not because they're not smart people, but because in many cases, protecting your business becomes more important than trying to disrupt your market. Now, the reality is you can be successful by thinking about how to be on the winning side of disruption. And think about companies like Tesla. Tesla didn't kill the automobile business. It didn't. It's still around. But it lifted it up. Every single car company this day and age, they're building these cool technologies into their cars. They're building connected cars. They're building autonomous capabilities. They're building electric cars, more so than before. Netflix didn't kill the box office, right? It just made cinemas more comfortable and more technology-oriented. They got bigger seats. You can eat in them now, right? They're not dead. They're just better. And so every single industry is made better by disruption. And to be on the winning side of disruption, you got to adopt and adapt to disruptive technologies. And in today's environment, you can't really come back to the business and say, you know what, if we go fast, something's going to break. Can't do it. You have to make sure that your business and your IT department and your applications are running, and they're both safe, resilient, but they're also moving fast. Because your audience, your customers, are expecting speed. Speed is expected. And speed is on the right side of disruption. It's on the winning side of disruption. And if you want to be there, you have to be able to move fast while being safe. And that optimal point between fast and safe is going to fluctuate. It moves around. If you think about cyber and security, that line is going up and down. And technologies also change. You've got core technologies. The way you think about those would be the data center environment, traditional applications, servers, networks, waterfall, reports. And you've got disruptive technologies. Some have been around for a while, such as cloud and DevOps and artificial intelligence, which we'll cover quite a bit today. And by the way, there are some technologies that are not yet disruptive, like quantum computing, that we might be talking about 5 years from now. But your ability to be able to mesh the two and adopt and adapt to disruptive technology is really what puts you on the winning side of disruption. And the cool thing about it is really every company can do that. You don't have to disrupt your markets to be able to win and thrive in this kind of an environment. And when we talk about run and reinvent at BMC, we really talk about pushing the envelope on both, being able to optimize your core and innovate in the core and move faster in core technologies, but also take the disruptive technologies and pull them into the mainstream. Make them better, make them work better with your existing environment, because nobody does an overhaul when new technologies come out. And more specifically, It's not just us. I mean, if you look at McKinsey, McKinsey typically does, they've got their 3 horizons model. And what they talk about in the data they collect, they talk about the core capabilities and the need to improve performance in the core business. They talk about experimenting with emerging opportunities, and then ideation, which would help the company leap forward. And the interesting piece of data is that they find out that most companies spend 90% of their efforts and resources on the core, which is largely keeping the lights on and driving incremental improvement. There are ideation pockets as well, but not enough efforts under emerging opportunities, meaning experimentation, trying new things, failing fast. We talk about failing fast all the time, but we're still not geared to fail fast. Companies, teams, and individuals are still terrified of failure. So the emerging piece here is what I encourage you to start thinking about as you go through the day. I heard about something today. Can I go try it out? Can I go implement it? Can I get some value out of it? And see if I can push the envelope on the things that I'm doing today. And more specifically, in 3 major areas. Cloud computing, DevOps, and AIOps have been around for a while. Cloud, interestingly, started as a hype and a way to circumvent IT with a lot of experimentation. It's still largely the domain of developers. But companies that have put it in production are not seeing necessarily the same outcomes that they hope to see. The cost models are going up. They're not as cheap as folks thought that they would be. And so thinking about cloud in a smart way, what do I put on the cloud? What do I take away from the cloud? How do I connect my cloud environments into my physical environments is really something that we'll discuss across all of our domains today. DevOps, a lot of companies think that they do it. The reality is that in many cases they put an organization together, but the benefits of DevOps are not easy to achieve. It's not an organizational change. It's a thought process that you have to go through. And there's no perfect, all-encompassing solution for DevOps in the industry today. But we'll talk about ways to make it better. And AIOps is something that is very, very early on. How do you take artificial intelligence and put it into, apply it against operations and automation and service? We'll cover that today. As Jeff said, it's very, very early on, and that's something that's going to unfold over time, but there are things that we can do today. And all that is really bound by pervasive automation. There's no way to achieve speed without massively automating everything. And the question you have to ask yourselves when it comes to automation is, are my automation tools able to do what I need them to do, or do I have to bend or change my process to get there? What am I sacrificing, and how can I go faster with automation? And with that, I'd like to invite Trish Weinberner on stage from eBay to talk a little bit about Run, Reinvent and what it means to them. So Trish, why don't you come on stage? All right, so I am the Chief Marketing Officer, and we're not going to get away without a selfie, so let's do it. Let's do it. All right, that's not good.
That's the other way.
That's the other way.
Come on, get excited.
There you go. We got a selfie on stage. So Trish, thank you. You've got a very, very cool title. What does it actually mean? What do you do at eBay?
Wow. I'm in the IT department, so my title changes about every 6 months. Every time we reorganize, you bring forth what we're talking about. But I run strategy for the IT organization. I run collaboration. I run user enablement. I run risk. The real platform
risk.
Within, I know.
That's a big word.
You have to have governance and the policy and be the bad guy. So I like some of the no categories that you have up there. Business operations overall. But I really divide my time between the user and what we need to do to make all the employees at eBay and our contractors be able to work and be productive and get their jobs done. And so it's really being the voice of all of those people, our customers, to the rest of our IT organization. And I have a lot of different avenues within that. And then the other half is my that governance and the being the know. Governance and policies that we set forth for the IT organization to be able to do the jobs, business continuity, technology recovery, responding to SOX and internal audit and all of those fun things that we have to do as an IT group. So
So you're sitting between the business and IT.
Correct.
It's always a fun job.
Yeah.
And what does Run and Reinvent mean for eBay?
We are going through a huge change right now. Our CIO changed. Our last CIO left. He had been in the company about 5 years in his role, and he took a new job. And so we promoted one of our internal gentlemen that ran our infrastructure, networking, and platform side. And he took on the role of being CIO. It's a fabulous place because it was an internal candidate for us, and so I didn't have to, teach and retrain my boss, so it was great because he had been a peer of mine in the past, so that was always a good place to be. And he was already very familiar with what we did. But he's been there now 60 days in his new role. His name is Rami Mazid. And what Rami wanted to do is bring us back to basics. Strategy is also part of my role. And something that we had always been able to have alignment across our verticals within the IT space, but something that we were always missing was the ability to have transparency and visibility into one another's work, and to actually then be able to move faster and not step on one another and figure out how can we maximize and utilize great tools or technology that somebody was using for one component and apply it to something else. So we did 3 things when Rami came in, and this is all within 60 days, and most of it he gave us a goal of doing it within 30, and he held us to this. So the first thing that we had to do is we reorganized just slightly. There were some component pieces, automation being a big one. Automation was split between 3 kind of component places within our organization. We had automation on the service management side, and actually our gentleman that is our BMC's biggest client. And that was really internal looking, helping global service desk, support, service management, running ITSM and Remedy. But it was all very internally focused. Then we had business vectors and verticals that were focusing on RPA automation and those just simple processing that we needed to add some automation to escalate in finance of close reporting and accounting practices and all that low-hanging fruit that we could apply automation to. But those 2 teams weren't working together. Well, that didn't make sense. We had different contracts, we had different processes, we had different tools, and none of it was actually then being monitored together. It wasn't being tracked. We weren't reporting on it. We didn't have combined reporting. And so that was a big opportunity that when Rami came on board, he said, you know what? This is all going to come together. So we moved automation into one group. It's a service owner, but we have then the sub-services that are then scattered across the organization. The second thing we did was data. We're an IT organization. You'd think that it stands for information technology, but we weren't really managing information. We didn't have a good insight into where is our data, who's responsible for it, what type is it. We did from a security perspective, but not from actual usability of that data.
So forget mining it, it's just starting with where it is and what it does.
Where is
right?
it and who
Yeah.
has it,
Okay.
right? And so of course with GDPR and those things, we have it and know it, but we're not using it. And so one of the other reorgs that we did, if you want to call it that, is that we put a focus on data management, data analytics, and we put it under our chief architect because we felt that having the architects fully understand where the data was, and then they could build the integration services to allow our users to be able to access that data. So that was number 2, so automation and data. The third one that we did was a focus on service delivery. Well, okay, so that's a key component of BMC, right? Service delivery frameworks. Sounds very, very simple, and I'm telling you, this was the biggest challenge I think we had in the organization. It's a cultural and a process change. Previously, the task or the ask, I'll say, that we gave to everybody, and we said you have 1 month to do it. Paul and I actually created a framework. We have to say we stole it from BMC. there were several articles and white papers that BMC had posted. And as a consultative partner, I want to say that having this insight as to what BMC did to manage your IT organization and your service delivery frameworks was a cheat sheet for us. And so we did use those. It's simply an outline of what's required to manage a service. You have to have governance and policies, and you have to make sure that you're following these governance and policies within audit and information security, InfoSec is what we call them. And then you have to manage your projects, the detail of your projects and your reporting. Then the third piece of it is, how do you operationalize it? How do you monitor? How do you provide metrics? How do you measure yourself? How do you measure success? And then the last part is, how do you support it? Who's your resource? Who's part of the team? So we created an outline, as simple as it is, gave it throughout the organization and said, all of you have a service that you provide to somebody. It might be to internal IT, it might be to the end customer, it might be to a business unit in finance, let's say, that you are managing. So the questions kept coming back to me. Well, I'm an app administrator or a system admin for SAP for finance. Am I a service owner? I go, are you? You answer that question to me. They needed a definition of what a service was. And I'm telling you, we had to have brown bag sessions. We had to redefine services for them several times over.
To feed and bribe people to get them to where they needed to.
They just didn't know exactly. So we worked with this. We now have 47 service delivery frameworks built within the first 30 days. And the biggest problem that people had, aside from understanding what could apply as a service or a subservice, was, well, I'm the owner, but I'm not responsible for everything in here. I'm going to point out operations because BMC plays a big role for our metrics and reporting and where our data is, and monitoring and things like that. They said, I don't own that. Somebody else does in our global service desk or in our service management team. And I said, they own the tool and they provide visibility into how you're going to monitor your service. But are you not looking and tracking your service? Don't you own that? Isn't the outcome of what they present yours? Well, yes. I said, okay, then you own it. People, they were so tied up in the organizational structure of hierarchy and what they actually had in their title or what they owned or whichever. And I said, throw the organization out of the door. It doesn't matter. So our reinvention is actually explaining and documenting categories and services that we're offering as a team and how you need to work together across the IT organization to deliver something to the end customer. And it sounds very simple, but I'm telling you, this has been the hardest cultural change that we've had to do.
So Trish, after all that, any last word of advice to the people sitting in the room that you want to share?
It really is breaking down the barriers of ownership, that utilize the technology as a tool, but don't rely on the technology to dictate how you deliver that service to the customer. So it's got to be simplify what your delivery is, make sure that it is visible and transparent so that everybody can actualize what is there, and not just the service management team that's the owner of the technology. It's utilize the technology as just the impetus behind what you're trying to deliver in the end. I don't know how much more I can say.
That's it. Trish Weinberger, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And without further ado, we're going to get into the meat. It is my distinct pleasure to invite Nayaki Nayar, our President of Digital Service and Operations Management, on stage.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Can you all hear me in the back? Beautiful, beautiful. So before I jump into all the cool new innovations that we will be talking about today and launching across our Helix and our TrueSight portfolio. Let's take a step back. You heard some of this from Sar, and look at the tsunami of tech that we are all experiencing. Jeff talked about the white paper that Harold Chen recently wrote on the explosion of clouds, where we no longer just have one cloud. We have private clouds, hybrid clouds, managed clouds, you name it, right? Multi-cloud is a reality in today's day and age. And with everything around us getting connected, I'm not talking about just consumer IoT or industrial IoT, even the assets that are right adjacent to the IT assets, how do we manage that complexity of the explosion of IoT assets just right around us? And then in a context of service, how do we handle the explosion of channels? How do you provide that service experience in the channel of end users' preference? How many of you here have a teenager? You know, the only way I can communicate with my teenager is through text messages. And I usually just get a 1 or 2 word responses, right? So in a day and age where we have Gen Zs entering our workforce, and we'll have 5 generations of employees in our workforce, how we provide that service in the channel of their preference, be it Slack as a channel, SMS as a channel, Skype as a channel, becomes a very, very key requirement. And then as DevOps becomes the norm, how we closely integrate and collaborate with the overall DevOps processes and the tool chains, not to mention the explosion of the data that is happening around us as the data is exploding beyond petabytes into zettabytes. How do we truly leverage the power of data to apply automation, and when I mean automation, cognitive automation, like AI/ML, bots, not just chatbots, but RPA bots on an end-to-end ITSM plus ITOM processes? How do we converge these 2 worlds to help you transform your business, starting from how we help you transform the discovery, how you can proactively, predictively discover every asset you have, not just on your on-prem assets, but assets across AWS, Azure, your multi-cloud world. How you monitor those assets, detect anomalies, provide this service, not just IT service, but also lines of business service, remediate before an issue actually happens, self-heal the process, and optimize the cost and the capacity of your entire landscape, and provide an omni-channel experience through bots or RPA bots, powered by AI/ML in every layer of your process, is how we help you transform from reactive to proactive, predictive, into the cognitive world. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we are evolving towards. We are evolving our core ITSM that we as BMC have been known for many, many years, and the ITOM portfolio, and converging them into this end-to-end process of discover, monitor, service, remediate, and optimize with embedded AI/ML. We started this journey a couple of years back on the ITSM side as we evolved our core remedy service management portfolio into cloud-native applications with Discovery, Helix Discovery. Now you can discover your on-prem assets, your multi-cloud assets across AWS, Azure, every cloud out there. Service those assets with embedded AI/ML in that entire ITSM stack that we have. So you can auto-classify, auto-assign, auto-route every ticket that's coming in. Extend that to lines of business. So now you can provide with business workflows. You can provide that service to HR, to procurement, to facilities, and deliver the experience through our digital workplace, not just the portal-based, but also various channels like Slack as a channel, SMS as a channel, Skype as a channel, powered by our platform, our microservices-based platform, the Helix platform, that we containerized using Docker and Kubernetes, so gives you a choice on the cloud you want to run on. You can pick the cloud you want to run on. You can run on our cloud, you can run on AWS cloud, or you can run on Azure cloud, which is what we call BMC Helix. We went through this transformation over the last couple of years, and it's available right now. We have a lot of customers around the world who use this entire stack, and I'm happy to really invite one of our key customers, Dennis Gilmore from Walgreens, who has been through us with this journey. Thank you, Dennis. Dennis and I met last year
Yes.
here at the Chicago event, and we talked about their journey to Helix. So Dennis, can you share your experience, especially as you rolled out Digital Workplace?
Our journey is real fresh. 3 weeks old. We rolled into Helix May the 17th. And we rolled out a version of DWP. We rolled out Smart IT quite some time ago. And a small subset of the firm was using the Smart IT application and the DWP application. We said the following things. We need to move forward. We need to be current. So we made the commitment to roll up to the latest and greatest release of 1902, and we did that once again 3 weeks ago, so that we could make our next upgrades as seamless as we needed them to be. And by the way, this upgrade was the most seamless upgrade that Walgreens has ever experienced.
Seamless upgrade. Big round of applause for Dennis and the team. That was one of the core requirements we had as we were evolving our entire portfolio to Helix, was to make your upgrades really seamless, which is what containers help us do it. So thank you, Dennis,
Yes.
for the journey.
And Naaki didn't pay me to say that. Now, the period after that, we've had some bumps, and we're going to work through those. We're going to have a conversation on those. But all in all, it was a great experience. And what we also did during this phase, we talk about change and transformation. The culture at Walgreens is like a big ship. It takes a bit to move that ship, and the only way we could move the ship and get them up into our newest user interface, digital workplace, and Smart IT was to kind of force them there. So we communicated months back, we trained, we recommunicated all the way up until it was time when they typed in their old URL, they no longer went to where they used to go. They literally hit DWP. So that was a shock. So we took that shock and we opened up a line, we took questions, we handled problems for the first week, 12 hours a day. And the second week was a little smoother. Now we're in our third week, literally no phone calls at this stage of the game. So it's been an experience, and we're pleased that we're now in a state that we can take advantage of a lot of the other opportunities, automation being the direction we're heading as well.
Beautiful. Dennis, can you also talk about Walgreens just went through a merger with Boots very recently, and you have decided to extend the Helix platform to the Boots arm of the organization too.
Right. So you don't hear this very often. You don't hear going from ServiceNow to BMC that often. So this is an example of where our Boots organization evaluated both ITSM providers and committed to BMC. Jim Johnson, key in that work. This signed a 4-year deal, and so now we're going to end up in truly a one IT environment. So first time in Boots, WBA, Walgreens Boots Alliance history that we're actually going to be on the same stack. So that's a big move in the right direction.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dennis. Truly appreciate your partnership, and thanks for the journey. So Walgreens running the entire Walgreens and the Boots arm on one common platform, the Helix platform, that they're going through this journey for their entire service experience. So really, thank you for the partnership. So moving on to some of the various key innovations that we recently released and announced with Discovery. As you all know, Discovery not only helps you discover your on-prem assets, and multi-cloud assets. We also launched Helix Discovery, which now you can run it as a service on AWS, but also discovery of containers. This was one of the common requests we were getting from all of you is, Nayaki, you know what, as the world is moving towards containers, how we can discover what's inside those containers. So we just recently launched the availability of discovery for discovering containers. And as the world is moving towards software-defined everything, so that the next wave of innovation that you will see from us on discovery is discovering all the hyperconverged infrastructure components in the next few releases. And then, by the way, discovery also integrates with other ITSM tools. If you choose to integrate beyond our Helix ITSM, you can also integrate with other ITSM tools. And in core ITSM, over the last few releases, we released what we call enhanced agent experience through chat ops and swarming. This is one of the key requirements we heard from most of you, is how we apply AI/ML beyond just auto classification, auto assignment, and auto routing to also the swarming process. So the last version that we released is available where you can now use it for swarming and chat ops, and tight integration into the DevOps processes. So we have integration into the Jiras of the world, Azure DevOps, so all the various DevOps tool chains that you have, we have integrations into that. And the next thing, one of the key asks we had from most of you was, how do we extend beyond IT service to lines of business? So we have what we call business workflow, where you can now extend the service management to HR. So if you want to have a shared services function across all your lines of business, be it HR, procurement, facilities, business workflows enables you to do that seamlessly, having the same data set and the same model and the service model, so you can provide that end-to-end experience, be it IT or line of business, to the entire organization. And transform that experience, one holistic service catalog across the company through digital workplace. One of the key things that we recently released was to extend your digital workplace beyond employees to also B2B and B2B2C. So if you want to deliver service outside the company to your customers, whether they are B2B customers or B2B2C, your consumers, you can also leverage. We do have quite a few customers who have extended it to their consumer world, and we do have verticalization embedded into it, especially starting with MSPs. Federated search was another key requirement, federated search with cognitive abilities, so you can search beyond just what's in our knowledge store. All of this would be demoed and showed in our sessions later in the afternoon, so please make sure you attend those sessions so you can get the details on all of these key innovations. Now, the key is the platform. Like you heard from Dennis, the transformation that we went through was not just for feature functions and all of the new innovation, it was really the platform lift that we did and how you can now operate this platform, upgrades, patches, new innovations. It's all microservices-based platform so that we can help you scale elastically, vertically, and horizontally. And the platform also has no-code, low-code, pro-code, so that you can have your business analysts quickly spin up additional applications, integrate those applications, or you can have your Java developers build very rich code-based applications. Now, another big thing that we did is embedding AI/ML into this end-to-end process. We started with the approach of system of intelligence, where the platform, the Helix platform, can integrate with your back-end NLP engine, be it IBM Watson or Google's TensorFlow. So this is available out of the box, where you can integrate with your back-end AI/ML platform, feed that into the core processes of discovery, ITSM, and all the key processes, and then provide that system of engagement through digital workplace and all the chatbots. So with that, let me invite April Hickel, our AVP of AI Ops processes, to share with us the journey that we have gone through on the TrueSight portfolio.
Thank you. Welcome. So I am here to share with you about how we're bringing AI into the core functions of IT operations. So if you boil it down to the very simplest things that we do in operations, it's really three things. So therefore, I have 3 slides. And after my 3 slides, I'm going to do a live demo for you. And if this whets your appetite for more, either learning more about the AI that we have in our products or signing up to see your own data in the demo, please join us in the kiosk. 7 out of 10 of you, so the majority of you in this room, are going to receive a mandate from your CIO to start using AI within the context of operations. And why is that happening? That's happening because there's so much data, right? SAR talked about what's happening with the technology disruption. Nayaki talked about the technology tsunami. So whether it's disruption or tsunami, the CIOs recognize that all of that data has to be acted on in a different way. So if you think about true site operations management, which is BMC's answer for managing the disparate environment that you have, we've added AI in to help us find problems faster. So we've extended our analytics and machine learning so we can consume all of this data and we can see what's happening with it. So we automatically learn the behavior of your environment. We predict what's going to happen with that, and we give you early warning so that you can take action before something goes wrong. Now, undoubtedly, with the complexity of your environment, with that environment being in the cloud, in your data center, something eventually will go wrong. But when it does, we have integrated log and event analytics so that your operators, your responders to that problem can remediate that extremely quickly. Now, that takes us to the next step. Ideally, nobody has to remediate a problem. It's discovered by our technology, which is running, observing your environment, learning your environment, detecting abnormalities, predicting problems. But in the case that we do, we can auto-remediate that. So if you think about the ideal state, things don't go wrong because anything that's detected to be wrong is automatically fixed. So we can auto-remediate anything that's happening in your events. And you say, well, how does that help me? Well, aside from keeping you off the front page of the newspaper, it gives you time back. We had a customer who in their first 7 months of using TrueSight automated their response to 94,273 events. That delivered back to their team 9,000 hours. So if you think about an extra 9,000 hours, that's something all of us could use. I personally could use it just to catch up on my email.
Beautiful.
Now, on auto-remediation, we don't stop with event remediation, right? Event remediation is the most glamorous type of remediation because it's fixing problems. But there's another type of remediation that we do within the TrueSight portfolio, which is maybe even more important. And this will appeal to our friends at eBay who have that risk and governance concern. So one of the scariest statistics in operations is that vulnerabilities that are breached, things that people that get access to your systems through a vulnerability, those vulnerabilities have probably been known to you for about a year. So it's not that anybody has a problem finding the vulnerabilities, it's that people have a problem fixing the vulnerabilities. So we offer automated vulnerability remediation. So you can consume all of the data from your security team, you can suck it into our TrueSight system, and that system will help you prioritize, understand, and automate the repair or the patching of those vulnerabilities. So that's the next thing. So find a problem using analytics, fix a problem using automation, fix security and risk problems, understanding your system. And then the third thing that IT operations is always trying to do is get better, right? So find problems, fix problems, that's great. But how do you optimize? And there's really two sorts of optimization that we really help you with. We've recently announced our new service views. These can be consumed or created directly from your discovery tool. So if you're using BMC Discovery, or if you have another source of data, CMDBs, other sources, we can automatically build a view of your application or service. And this view represents how that application or service is using the underlying infrastructure. Now, this is important because there's a risk associated with infrastructure use. If you run out of infrastructure, you're going to impact your users or your new service. And our reputation in IT operations is built on what? Availability of the service, user experience of the service. So making sure you know how your service is using the infrastructure and that you don't have any risk that you're going to run out of network bandwidth, storage, compute power as your business scales and grows. So this is something we do for you. Now, there's a new type of optimization that you're probably also starting to think about. As you move on your cloud journey, what are you trying to optimize? There's unlimited scale, unlimited resource. You're not worried about saturating your infrastructure. You're worried about what? The surprise bill. So I'm going to transition over here. I cannot talk and type, so I'm sorry if there's an awkward silence while I get myself logged back into my computer. But I'm going to give you a demo now on optimizing cost in real time.
So while Allison is bringing that up, so that was a real closed loop of how we discover, how we monitor, right, proactively, predictively, how we service, how we remediate, and how we optimize. So Allison, beautiful. Go ahead.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, one of the new types of optimization, if you haven't started thinking about, you will after you see your first cloud bill and you realize that a cloud bill doesn't come in an easily consumable way. So the first thing you might recognize is you have a whole bunch more cloud accounts than you thought you did. So the way I thought the cloud was going to work is everybody got one bill, like a credit card bill. Well, you get all of your accounts, and in this example, we see customers with hundreds of accounts. People are consuming the cloud themselves, right? So you might have one account one day and 50 accounts the other day. So the first thing that we help you with is we give you visibility regardless of the cloud. So you're experimenting with multiple clouds, no problem. We bring all of the accounts, all of the clouds together in a single easy-to-read dashboard. And this not only tells you what you're spending today, but this is going to forecast ahead for you what you're spending. It's going to tell you if you're spending more or less than you were last month. And you can start to really dissect this. So in this particular case, we have a dashboard. We can say we're spending about $24,000 a month. That's down a little bit month over month. You can see some interesting information about how much stuff we're using in the cloud. But probably more relevant to you is how does that break down between our different services? So if you think about it, what are you going to need to do? People consume cloud themselves, right? People consume cloud themselves, so they want to know how much their cloud, part of the cloud, is costing, their resources. So as this comes up, I'm sorry. So interestingly, you're getting a little side benefit here. This is within our cloud operations platform, which also offers security and governance, okay? So I'm just going to switch back to my cloud cost. My login timed out. So you want to break it down because you want to provide this self-service way for these people who are consuming cloud resources to understand what they're doing. I just recently met with one of our clients, a large media company, and when he started to look at their cloud spend, he realized that they were wasting 90 cents on the dollar. So I'm going to show you what they're doing now to optimize. So what you see here now is not my whole aggregate, every cloud, every service spend, but now you see my individual services. And you can see each of these services is assigned a budget, and we're projecting their performance against that budget. So right here in the middle, you can see some red numbers. This signifies that we're predicting using analytics that this particular application is going to be over budget by the end of the year. So let's take a look at them and see how they're doing. So here we go. So what you see in the middle of the screen, there's a line, a dark blue line, that's the budget. So you can see we've got a chronic overspender in the cloud. So either we have a budget problem or we have a wild, wild west problem. So these developers for this service are continuing to grow their spend month over month in the cloud. Now, that is interesting and informative, and we can share that with them, and we can give them a dashboard and kind of twist their arm to look at that. But the problem is they probably don't know what all that stuff is anymore. It's very exciting. You can spin up a VM. You can do all sorts of things in the cloud very quickly. What do they do? So going to Nayaki's point that not only do we provide the monitoring and the automation, but we can actually do the optimization. So I'm going to just scroll down here and show you our optimization capabilities. So we have 3 different optimization capabilities, and we're going to tell you exactly how much money they're going to save you. So I, as a consumer of the cloud, can see what I'm spending, how I'm going to approach my budget, meet or beat. I can see what I'm using in the cloud, and this is an unlimited amount of detail that's available, and I'm going to be able to take an action. So by going in here, there's 3 different types of optimization actions that we can take. One is we can look for stuff that's just not doing anything for us, so idle VMs. And we detect, has that VM been working? Is there network traffic? Is there disk use? You know, there's all sorts of things we do to determine if that's truly an idle resource. We can say, hey, you've got workload on resources, but those are really big resources for that amount of workload. So we can calculate and understand your workload and tell you you're over-allocated, right? So reduce the size of that system, save money. And then the third thing we can do is we can detect and recommend for you a power schedule. So you can power off resources, save your money while you're not doing any workload, though power back on. So power scheduling resources. We at BMC found power scheduling of resources to be a big cost optimization activity for ourselves, our own use of the cloud. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to end my demo by showing you what taking one of these actions would look like. This is our environment. If you say, hey, I think this could apply to my cloud environment, you can sign up for a free trial, and that free trial connects to your own data. So you can look at your own cloud environment and see how you are doing. So I have 17 idle VMs. I have an opportunity to save about $1,000 a month. If I do that, you can see here's my list of idle VMs. I'm sure this is like tiny little print on the screen, but just trust me, there's a list of idle VMs here. Tells me information about them, how long have they been idle, how much are they costing me, etc. So this is how easy it is to do your cleanup. I'm just going to go right here to this item, and I'm going to say terminate the VM. helpful confirmation message, and that is done. Green happy box at the end says we've gone ahead and terminated. So that will allow me then to optimize my resources. So again, from an IT operations perspective, when you think about our portfolio, we're really targeting at using analytics to help you find problems, using automation to help you fix problems, and then finally using optimization to save you both resources in your data center and cost in your clouds. Thank you.
Perfect.
I'm going to turn it
Great.
back to Nayaki.
Thank you, Allison. On the topic of automation, one of the key focus areas we have is bot automation, both on the chatbot side and our PA bots. So we recently announced our partnership with Automation Anywhere. We have Hanish Patel here from Automation Anywhere. Hanish, please big round of applause to Hanish and the massive success.
Thank you very much.
So Hanish, can you share the journey
Yeah.
Automation Anywhere has gone through and our partnership?
Yeah, let me, thank you very much for the warm welcome. So let me introduce myself. My name's Hanish Patel. I work for Automation Anywhere. For those of you who don't know who Automation Anywhere are, we are the market leader for robotic process automation. So that's an evolving technology that leverages software bots to work alongside human workers to take away that repetitive, mundane work that human workers have to do, but then frees those human workers up to do more value-add work that only humans can actually do. Our platform consists of three things: advanced RPA technology, artificial intelligence, so our software bots have some level of cognition, right? Some probabilistic decision-making can happen, and then embedded analytics. So the analytics help us monitor and manage those bots. And
Next slide, sorry.
okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Help us manage and monitor those bots so we can audit those bots and also make sure they comply. So this is just an overview of Automation Anywhere. You can see we actually started the year with 1,000 employees. We think we'll exit the year with about 2,500 employees. So we're growing at quite a clip. We have 2,800 plus enterprise customers. In fact, if you were to look at the largest 10 banks in the world, 8 have deployed Automation Anywhere. We've deployed over 1 million digital workers now, and we operate it in 90 plus countries. So we're growing at quite a clip. What I'd like to do, if I could, maybe Nike, is just give an example of how Automation Anywhere works with BMC. So let me just do that. Yeah. So this is an example of end-to-end service desk automation. So here you've got a BMC Helix chatbot interacting with users who need support. The chatbot then segregates those user requirements and then routes it to the appropriate level of support. So L0, L1, level 2 support maybe, and you have individuals, support personnel actually trying to work on those queries, on those support queries, and they're working with the various applications. It might be a CRM application or ERP application. They're doing some form of maybe data entry as well, so taking information from the user, inputting into one of those applications, might be a legacy application. Anyway, they're having to do that. So wouldn't it be great, because some of the tasks those support personnel are doing are repetitive and mundane. Wouldn't it be great if you could have software bots working alongside those human workers to take care of some of those repetitive tasks? So, think of password resets, think of software installs where a user needs guidance to actually install a software upgrade, or, a user's got an alert, they don't know what to do with it, they need to be guided through what should be done with that alert. So this is just an example of where, bots can help, bots can work alongside human workers and freeing up those human workers to do other things. And the benefits of the bots, we can just mimic what the user actually does. So we have a tool that captures the user keystrokes, the user movements, the fields that need to be entered. So, and that way, it's very easy for us to develop that bot very quickly. The benefit of a bot is the bot doesn't get interrupted. So a user can be working there and suddenly taps them on the shoulder and they lose concentration. Well, you can't do that to a bot. And because a bot does not make data entry mistakes, then you get accuracy, 100% accuracy, and get faster processing. And of course, a bot works 7 by 24 by 365. So you can get a bot to schedule something at an ungodly hour and do that. A human being doesn't need to do that. And because we provide this embedded analytics, you have auditability and compliance with respect to a bot. So let me just talk a bit about our partnership, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we entered a strategic partnership with BMC earlier on this year. And both companies recognize that if we combine the RPA technology from Automation Anywhere with the cognitive management service technologies from BMC, we could automate some of these back-end service desk processes, so we didn't need human intervention. So really, that's a way of BMC saying, look, we can optimize many of our customers' processes in these back-end service desk processes, excuse me. And for us, that was very exciting. We were really excited to work with BMC because we see BMC as a category leader, and we see BMC as driving innovation and change in this ITSM sector. So for us, it was a really attractive proposition. You know, we see our philosophies aligned. We are trying to help our customers through their digital transformation process, just as BMC is. And we love the intensity with which you work. We're an intense organization. So again, the culture is very well aligned.
Beautiful.
So thank you. It's been a wonderful partnership.
Thank you, Harnish.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch.
Sorry, I should just say, if you don't mind, we have a booth at the back. Please come and see us. And if we're busy, leave us your business card. We'll follow up. But we'd love to work with you and BMC to see how we can optimize your environment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So really, how we're extending automation with RPA. RPA is going to be a next big focus area for us, and how we work with automation to bring that end-to-end for the entire closed-loop process that we talked about. I do have a chatbot demo, but I'm going to skip it because we're already over time. Darren was scheduled to come here and do it. I will have Darren do the chatbot demo in our afternoon sessions. It's the next wave of automation that we are bringing in our chatbot, so please make time to look at all those various cool new features that we have. With that, ladies and gentlemen, you can start your transformation, you can accelerate your transformation, and you can really help transform both service and operations with BMC Helix. Thank you all. My partner in crime.
It's all good.
Thank you.
Some amazing things taking place in Nayaki's business. And I'd like to take a little bit of time to talk about some of the exciting things that are happening in the digital business automation business at BMC. And I think since we're talking about run and reinvent, it's maybe worthwhile to take just a minute to think about all the things that we need to run as we reinvent. And so I wanted to take just a moment and understand how our architecture, and what our environment actually looks like, and how we got to where we are today. And when we think about it, there's quite a bit that we need to manage. And if we think at the bottom, we have the infrastructure axis, right? When we started with mainframes, and many of us still have mainframes today, and went to distributed systems, and to virtual systems, and now to software-defined, right? We think about cloud, and cloud is not just a server that runs on somebody else's hardware, right? Cloud, in many cases, is a serverless architecture, a container, a Lambda function, something that's just ephemeral and really just defined through a software interface versus a physical server. But at the same time that we innovated, or we had all this massive innovation and disruption on infrastructure, we had the same when we talk about data architectures. We went from files to databases, to structured to unstructured data, to streaming data. And when we talk about AI, when we talk about big data, when we talk about analytics, it's really all about how do we take all this massive amount of data and make sense out of it. But at the same time that we have innovation around the infrastructure axis and innovation around the data axis, we also have innovation around the application axis. And if I was a little more graphically inclined, maybe I'd have a different career as a graphical designer, and this would be a three-dimensional chart. But nonetheless, we have innovation around the application axis, where we went from monolithic applications to client-server applications, to mobile, to web applications. And when we think about DevOps or agile development, right, it's all about being able to innovate faster and faster and faster. And the interesting thing here is that we really don't have, those are not independent axes, because innovation on each and every one requires the innovation on the other two to happen. We're really moving waves along those, right? So if we think that, well, it's never quite as simple as those clean waves, right? Because it's not like we stop doing mainframe and move to distributed system and client server, right? At every point in time, we have all the other things are still there. So we sometimes talk about spaghetti infrastructure or spaghetti architecture. With all those waves or layers, it's really more like a lasagna architecture, right? With all those layers, but it's still a mess because all those layers get intertwined. We'd love to go to a ravioli architecture where everything is in a well-defined pocket of functionality. Not so close. Well, for Chicago, we probably have to have some deep dish architecture as well, but I will leave that for a different day. The reality is that all those things are intertwined, right? And when we reinvent and move to the next wave, we still have to run everything that's on the prior waves. And we have to manage them all in context because each and every application and each and every element of infrastructure and data relies on all this legacy because all these legacies makes us who we are, makes us valuable, is everything that we are as a company. So we have always innovated across those axes, right? And Control M has always been at the nexus, if you may, of applications, of data, and of architecture. I won't provide a lot of update on that today. If you want, we have more information on that in the track. But I'd love to share the story of a customer. So let's roll a customer video.
Raymond James is a full financial services firm that services across the United States and internationally. The financial advisors are looking for that availability of their applications. Getting that data out there available for them is a leg up on the competition. Last time this year we were doing about 1.2 million job executions on a monthly basis. We've jumped to just over 2 million last month, and we've been very successful because of Control M, what it's allowed us to do to be adaptable to that growth. Now people have an insight into when their applications are running, how quickly they're running, when they're delayed, the estimations on them. We're talking about over 500 applications, and a good majority of them are integrated in some way, shape, or form. Just understanding the impact allows them a better insight on maybe how they want to create code or adapt their application. Recently, we had an application that caused an issue with some database locking in our data warehouse. We were able to get a handle on it and an understanding of it within hours, and then within 3 weeks, we're able to pull it out, get it scheduled in Control M, so we're not dealing with that issue again. Our customers are demanding, and we want to meet that demand. You want to provide a solid platform because that's how they're working with their customers, and it's never ending. It's not Monday through Friday business anymore. I don't know what price tag you put on that, but that's impactful to our business, to our users. It's huge.
So this is a great story, but it is my privilege to introduce the man himself to hear what's new, Chris Haynes from Raymond James. Chris, could you tell us a little bit about Raymond James, about what you're doing, how you're working, how to stay ahead of the competition in the financial services market?
Right, just a little bit about Raymond James. We're a full service financial investment firm, like I talked about in the video. We're still there. We have just around 8,000 financial advisors, administering over $780 billion in client assets. This is across 2,600 locations globally. Really, we recently brought out an application that we're really excited about. It's called Advisor Text, which allows our financial advisors to communicate directly with their clients via text while still maintaining our compliance standards. And that's a huge piece that we're trying to focus on, not only making it simpler to do business with Raymond James, but the whole, just the client experience.
So a lot of things are changing. I see you have a little bit of a Game of Thrones things going. Well, how has your role changed at Raymond James as a result?
Well, I'm obviously not on the Iron Throne, but yeah, my team's responsibilities are always evolving, but we really have two foundational pieces that we focus on, and that's workload automation and continuous improvement. Really, we play in a couple of different spaces with that, and whether it's collaborating with a team to develop a new application or gathering analytics to drive those continuous improvement pieces. One of the key performance indicators that we have from that work is we've seen an 11% increase in meeting our critical business SLAs over the last year, going from 87 to 98. And that's a big deal there. So our business is able to feel that. And that's something, so that's how we're really playing a big role in our digital business transformation journey.
That's great. So I know Control-M has been a key part of helping you meet critical parts of the business. Tell us a little more about that and how it's evolving.
So really, Control-M underpins many of our business applications that are facing. And really, previous versions where we were on other platforms, we didn't have the complete insight into how everything was interconnected and really able to identify trends where we were going in a negative way and not meeting themselves. But one of the big pieces that we've really found that's been a cultural change for us is the self-service functionality in Control-M, which is huge. A couple of years ago, we probably had about 30 folks using self-service. We're now over 500 folks across enterprise, every different level. Business users are looking on there to see when their application is available so they can schedule their teams accordingly, to all the way to the senior level management to understand where our processing on a daily basis is.
Wow.
So
that's cool.
Right, and another piece, as a financial services firm, audits. I think we're constantly dealing with year-round. It's not a quarterly thing. It's weekly. So really, we've seen a real streamlining of that, where we are having resources spending tons of time manually gathering data to get it to the auditors. We've cut that dramatically, and now we're able to reallocate those resources to more business useful functions like continuous improvement.
I think you shared the number with me before, 96% reduction in the amount of effort it takes to run an audit, which is amazing, right? That's better than an order of magnitude. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Could you tell us a little more about what you're doing moving forward to maintain the competitive edge and to run and reinvent Raymond James?
Right, so we're always looking for the newest functionality that Control-M offers. So we're always looking at the newest upgrade. And previously, we would really have to see if the juice was worth the squeeze, so to speak, because before the in-place upgrade was there, it would take a couple of months to do it. We cut that down to weeks. So it's really, especially, and I got to say that some of the newer functionality in the last couple of years has really benefited us, especially when I'm talking about that self-service functionality and stuff like that. Excuse me. But that's really where we're pushing. Another big piece, we bought Managed File Transfer 2 years ago. File transfers are a huge part of our business, delivering files out to advisors so they can have all the reports they need to interact with their clients. So understanding those transfers, if we're seeing any degraded performance, things like that. In addition to a great auditing pieces for those file transfers, so we understand that. One of the things going forward, I think this past year, we've been introducing the automation API out to our development teams, and they really love it, and They got a sneak peek into version 19 of the additional pieces there. So that's really been a benefit to us, because we want to focus on when there's a new shiny toy that they're working on, we want to make sure we're getting that tested appropriately at their pace, how they want to do it, and get it moved to production. So we're putting our clients and advisors in the best space. And the last thing we're really working on, and it speaks to our partnership, and I think everybody who's been up here today has talked about their partnership with BMC and how it's really worked for you. You guys are coming out next week to do a DevOps workshop with our DevOps team, spending the day and just showing us the best way that path forward. So that's really exciting, and it's going to be a continuing game-changing experience there, because transformational journey, right?
Thank you so much, Chris. What a great story. We're looking forward to extend the partnership and help Raymond James run and reinvent their business.
Very cool.
I will say just a few words. You heard about Control M19. You can see more about Control M19 at our track later today. We'll have some exciting information. I won't belabor the point right now, but you hear about how to deliver applications faster, exchange data with external business partners, and much more. So please join us at our track later today. There's also going to be there are going to be multiple tracks. And again, thank you for being here. Thank you so much.
You might say I have a lot to balance.
That may be a bit of an understatement.
From the moment I punch in
To the moment I punch out,
my job is to run.
not that kind of run.
My job is to reinvent.
Run and reinvent.
Run and reinvent.
Run and reinvent.
They're all watching me.
To make sure that our IT is running smoothly.
So customers don't bail on us.
Can somebody else hold this for a little while? Everyone is also looking at me to innovate.
To move us from the old, manual ways of working
With a secure, cost-effective transition to the cloud.
To focus on reinventing new experiences for our customers.
How can I run if all my time is spent reinventing?
How can I reinvent if all my time is spent running?
Does anyone know how to help me from dropping this thing?
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now take a 15-minute networking and coffee break between sessions.
I know there's a lot of people still in transition. If you're hanging out towards the rear of the room, please come forward. There's lots of seats here in the middle, just as people are still grabbing food and drinks and refreshing coffee. So, but thank you again for coming back into the room and joining us. As I mentioned earlier this morning, our guest speaker, Dr. Avi Goldfarb, is the Ellison Professor of Marketing at the Rotman School of Management, and is the first holder of the Rotman Chair in Artificial Intelligence and Healthcare at the University of Toronto. He's also the Chief Data Scientist at the Creative Destruction Lab. He's the Senior Editor at Marketing Science. He's a Research Associate at the National Bureau of Economic Research, and he's the President of the Goldfarb Analytics Corporation. So hopefully his comments will include some advice around how to manage 6 or 7 jobs and roles, and some effective time management techniques, because I know that's an awful lot and incredibly impressive. He is also, not to be outdone, the co-author of the Globe and Mail best-selling book, Prediction Machines, The Simple Economics of Artificial Intelligence. And he's going to speak today about how AI will affect business, public policy, and society in terms that really work for decision makers in any field. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Avi Goldfarb to the stage. Thank you, sir. Here you go.
Here we go. Welcome, everybody. So I'm going to talk to you about all this excitement around AI, around artificial intelligence. And I'm going to start with how I got to hear about artificial intelligence. So it's me. Am I going backwards? Okay. There we go. There we go. Okay, so this is my employer, my primary employer. I'm a professor at the University of Toronto. And I sit in the business school, and 2 blocks down the road from where I sit is our computer science department. And about 25 years ago, the computer science department at the University of Toronto made some really, whether brilliant or lucky bets, depends on your point of view, but they invested in hiring a computer scientist named Jeff Hinton and a handful of others who were building a new technology, a new set of technologies around trying to get computers to work like they thought the human brain worked. And so it was a different approach to artificial intelligence than we've seen before. And it turned out, 20 years after that, around, depending on how you count between 2006 and 2012, that the things that they were inventing worked at a broad scale in commercial applications. So we sit at the University of Toronto, and 2 blocks down the road from where I sit were these fundamental inventions in artificial intelligence that this year won the Turing Award, the sort of Nobel Prize in computer science. Now, I don't know how many of you remember university days, but if you were sitting in a business school and this awesome stuff was happening in the computer science department, the norm would be, at best, you'd read it in like the school newspaper and say, oh, that's cool, and that will be the end of it. What's different is Ajay Joshua and I, my co-authors on the book, the current heads of AI research at Facebook, at Apple, at OpenAI, were all through Toronto about 10 years ago. Now, Ajay Joshua and I run this organization called the Creative Destruction Lab. And the Creative Destruction Lab is a program to help science-based startups scale. And so we sit in the business school, but we help startups, entrepreneurs, build companies. And in the first year we ran the lab, which was 2012, there was a guy who came in, Abe Heifetz, who was a student of Hinton's in our computer science department, and said, I have this idea to use artificial intelligence to figure out how to discover new drugs. We're going to predict which molecules bind with which proteins and use AI for drug discovery. That was pretty neat. And then the next year, in 2013, we had a handful more companies saying they were going to use the exact same technology to help insurance companies fill out forms, to help lawyers figure out tax policy, to help oil companies figure out what crude oil, the content of crude oil. This same technology was used in all these different applications. At which point we thought, you know, this is interesting. There's something here. And then the next year we went from 4 AI companies to 25 AI companies, to the point where now, through our Creative Instruction Lab, we have seen hundreds and hundreds of AI-based startups try to build companies based on this same technology in almost every application, every single business sector. And what this talk is, and what our book is a summary of what we knew about, what we studied when we were sort of economists and business school professors, trying to get our heads around technological change, combined with what we've learned from advising these hundreds of startups. And so when we hear about AI, there's a lot of excitement. You know, as businesses are adopting AI, there's going to be huge productivity benefits. The world is going to change. Disruption is going to happen. You guys have all heard that over and over and over again. And combined with that excitement is a little bit of anxiety, right? Combined with the excitement is, well, wait a second. Artificial intelligence, if the machine's intelligent, what does that mean for us humans? What's left for us? Underlying both the hype and the anxiety is a lot of confusion. And it's confusion about what we're really talking about here, right? If you read the press, the optimistic scenario of AI, the optimistic scenario is C-3PO. What's C-3PO? C-3PO is an artificial intelligence, a robot, that can do just about everything humans do. And C-3PO does 2 things better than human. One, they highlight in the movie, which is that C-3PO can translate from one language to another. And one they don't highlight as much, which is that C-3PO listens to humans. What makes C-3PO the optimistic scenario for artificial intelligence is it can do everything else we can do, it does it better, and it listens to us. The pessimistic scenario, which fills the rest of science fiction, is all about these machines that can do everything we do, but they don't listen to us. That's what The Matrix is about. That's what The Terminator is about. That's what Ex Machina is about. That's what we see as the pessimistic scenario. Now, it's important to just establish, I don't think this idea of a truly intelligent machine, artificial general intelligence, is crazy. I used to think it was crazy, but I was convinced by some very good psychologists that it is not. But I think it's important to recognize that this is not why we're talking about AI today. The reason we're talking about artificial intelligence in 2019, and we weren't talking about it in 2009, and we weren't really talking about it in 1999, has nothing to do with an artificial general intelligence. That technology has been 20 to 50 years away since the very first AI conference at Dartmouth College in 1956, and it continues to be 20 to 50 years away. That's not never, but that's not what we're talking about now. What we're talking about now is a very particular technology called machine learning has suddenly gotten much better, and we've recognized all sorts of commercial applications. And when you think about machine learning, when we think about the current generation in AI, the reason we're talking about AI today, don't think about it as machines that learn. Don't think about it using any particular sort of human metaphor. Think about it as prediction technology. What's happened is machines have gotten much, much better at prediction. That's a long way away from either C-3PO or the Terminator, but it's still really exciting. To get your heads around why it's important, why it's a big deal for a very particular thing like prediction to get better, faster, and cheaper, it's worth jumping back a technology generation and remembering the internet? So I get the sense that most of you in this room remember 1995. To admit, when I teach this at the university, none of them remember this year, and some of them weren't even born. But 1995 was a very exciting year in technology. Right? 1995 was the last year that the public aspects of the internet were privatized, the NSFNet. It was the year of Netscape's IPO, where they were valued at over $1 billion without any profits. And it was the year of Bill Gates' internet tidal wave email, where he said, you know what, Microsoft, we missed this. This technology, the internet, is the future of computing, the future of software. And from now on, Microsoft is going to be focused on delivering this technology and making it happen. And so the hype kept building, 96, 97, 98, to the point where people stopped talking about it as a new technology, and they started to referring to the internet and the era as a new economy. Now, you heard new economy. We can throw out our textbooks. We can throw out the old rules. We need a whole new set of rules. Now, there was one group of people who said it's not a new economy, and that was us. That was the economists, right? We said, no, 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 no. It's the same old economy. We don't need a new set of rules. We just need to understand what's changed. Once you understand that search is cheaper, once you understand that communication is cheaper, once you understand that copying, replication of information is cheaper, then you can map out all the consequences of what's going to happen. If you understand that copying is cheap, you can foreshadow, recognize that, for one, copyright is going to be a much bigger deal. And two, you can recognize that privacy is going to be a much bigger deal. Once anything you say to anyone can instantly be broadcast to everyone, everywhere in the world for free, then we're going to care a little bit more about privacy, and it's going to be part of the national conversation. That was clear if you understood what changed. To really get your heads around this idea of understanding technological change as a drop in the cost of something, let's jump back another generation and think about the computer, the semiconductor. What does your computer really do? It feels like your computer does all sorts of things, right? It feels like it does pictures and music and mail, but it doesn't do any of that. It does one thing. It just does it really, really well. And as economists, it's useful to just think about it as a drop in the cost of something. Better, faster, cheaper. What is it? It's arithmetic, right? Your computer does arithmetic. It adds. That's it. It does it really, really, really well. But that is what it does. And so the first applications we had for machine arithmetic were good old-fashioned arithmetic problems, right? In World War II and shortly after, effectively, we had cannons and they shot cannonballs. And it's a really difficult arithmetic problem to figure out the trajectory of those cannonballs, where they're going to land. But it's an important arithmetic problem. And so we had teams of humans whose job was called computer. If you saw the movie Hidden Figures, this was a movie about these teams of humans who did arithmetic. But as machine arithmetic got better, faster, cheaper, it came in and replaced the humans. Then it got even cheaper. And it came for accounting. If you ask an accountant from the 1940s and 1950s, even into the 60s and later, what they spent their time doing, they spent their time adding. A good homework problem from my colleagues in our accounting department was to open up the white pages to, say, page 972, look at the column of phone numbers, and add them up. And, OK, so why? Why? Well, partly because professors are like that. But the students put up with it. And why did the students put up with it? Because they recognized they would be spending their lives doing arithmetic. And so this practice at efficient arithmetic and accurate arithmetic was important to what they would do as accountants. Accountants don't spend their time doing arithmetic anymore. But part of the hope is to recognize there's still lots of accountants around. Because the people who were good at arithmetic also turned out to be best positioned to leverage that arithmetic for company strategy, for tax policy, etc. But then arithmetic started getting even cheaper. And we found a whole new class of problems that we didn't used to think of as arithmetic problems that could be solved with arithmetic. It turns out that games can be reframed as arithmetic. Mail is arithmetic. Music is arithmetic. Pictures are arithmetic. We used to think of pictures as a chemical problem. Kodak was a chemical company at the end of the day. But then arithmetic became cheap, and we could reframe that chemical problem as an arithmetic problem. So that gets us to today's technology. This is a representation of a convolutional neural net. This is one of the technologies underlying the current excitement in artificial intelligence. When we think about this, we should think about it as a drop in the cost of prediction. Better, faster, cheaper prediction. And so just like with arithmetic, we are starting to use artificial intelligence, prediction machines, in good old-fashioned prediction problems. Anyone here take an economics class at some point in your lives out of curiosity? Okay. So on day one, for those of you who didn't take one, the very first thing you learn is that when the price of something falls, you buy more of it. Demand curve slope downward. That's all we're talking about here. Simple economics. As prediction gets cheap, we're going to do more and more and more machine prediction. Some definitions. When I'm talking about prediction, it can be about the future, but it doesn't have to be. Prediction is the process of filling in missing information. It can be about the present, it can be about the past. If you think about the classic magical prediction tool, the crystal ball, right? And movie image of a crystal ball, The Wizard of Oz, I imagine. What does Dorothy see when she looks into the crystal ball? She doesn't see the future. She sees what Auntie Em is doing in the present. Right? Prediction is about filling in missing information. That is magical, but it's not necessarily about the future. So what happens? As prediction gets cheap, we start using prediction in good old-fashioned prediction problems. Right? You walk into a bank, you want a loan. The bank has to predict whether you're going to default or not. That is an old-fashioned, like a multi-thousand-year-old prediction problem. Not the bank itself, but whether you should give someone a loan. Okay. Increasingly, we're using machine learning to predict whether people are going to default or not. Applying this prediction tool into an old-fashioned prediction problem. The insurance industry loves AI. Insurance industry loves machine learning. Why? Their business is prediction. It's what they do. In some sense, it's all they do. Everything else is allowing them to make better, faster predictions and price them properly. So better prediction is going, has direct application into insurance. But just like with arithmetic, as prediction gets cheap, we're starting to discover applications of prediction that we never really thought of as prediction problems. Turns out medical diagnosis is prediction. What does your doctor do? They take in data about your symptoms, and they fill in the missing information of the cause of those symptoms. That's prediction. And increasingly, we're using machine learning, AI, to aid in diagnosis. Image recognition is prediction. How do you recognize a cat on the internet? Your eyes take in light signals. That's really it. And they fill in the missing information of a name and a context. right? That is prediction. And increasingly when we can think of image identification, facial recognition as prediction. And driving is a particularly interesting prediction problem. Right? So for the past 10 to 15 years, there's been massive advances in autonomous driving. And it turns out the robotics behind autonomous driving are pretty straightforward, and we've been able to do them for a long time. The car is already a machine. All you have to tell it to do is turn left, turn right, accelerate, and brake, right? The robotics are easy. The hard thing is to know when do you turn left, right, accelerate, and brake. And so the early attempts at autonomous driving were with if-then statements. Hey, if there's a large shape in front of the car, stop. But if that shape somehow seems to be a plastic bag, continue. That turned out to be really hard. There's a lot of possible ifs. And so autonomous driving got stuck. Then, about 15 years ago, someone figured out we don't need to tell the car what to do. All we need to tell the car is to predict what a good human driver does, and then have the car effectively sit on the shoulder of the human, just as your teenager might sit beside you and learn a little bit about how to drive by observing you drive. We have the car, the robot, the machine, observing millions and millions of miles of good human driving, and then in any new situation predict, given that data, what a human would do in that situation. And we're only a couple years in. We're going to have lots and lots and lots of new ideas, new ways to think about the opportunities in prediction. Now, so we talked about Econ 101. When prediction gets cheap, we're going to do more prediction. Just like on day one, we usually don't use prediction. On day one, we use something like coffee. When coffee gets cheap, we buy more coffee. Okay? Great. What else happens when coffee gets cheap? We buy less tea. Tea and coffee are substitutes. So if coffee is cheap and you're in the tea business, you're in trouble. If machine prediction is cheap and your job is fundamentally about human prediction, you're going to need to think about new ways and new opportunities in your workflow. Where do those new opportunities come from? They come from complements. When coffee gets cheap, we buy more cream and sugar. Cream and sugar are the complements to coffee. So the big question and the big opportunity around machine prediction is, what are the complements to prediction? What becomes more valuable as prediction gets cheap? To get your head around that, you need to recognize what prediction is for. A prediction in and of itself has no use. Who cares? It doesn't help you. Predictions are only useful because they help you make better decisions. It's decision making that's a big deal, and prediction's an input into that decision making. And so those decisions that you make, big picture decisions, what job should I take? Should I retire? Should I sell to this client? Where are the big opportunities? And small decisions. Should I scratch my face? Should I write that down? All of these decisions have predictions in the background. And so predictions are useful because they're inputs into decision making. Decision making is the big deal. And the complements come from the other parts of decision making that aren't prediction. And so you can map out, here's how we map out decisions. So prediction's at the center, because the book's called Prediction Machines, and that's what's changed. We have different kinds. Predictions aren't useful. Decisions aren't useful unless you can do something with them. So the first thing to recognize is the ability to take action, the ability to own the customer relationship. That is more valuable because you can serve your customers better if you have better prediction. So the first thing to recognize is the value of action. The value of what you can actually do with the prediction goes up. Second, this should be familiar to this audience, we know that data is now more valuable because data is the core input into prediction machines. You Machine learning relies on lots and lots and lots of data to make better and better predictions. And so when we think about data as the new oil, what do we really mean by that? So I actually like this metaphor. You hear this metaphor, criticized all the time. Here's what I like about the metaphor of data as a new oil, which is that you're sitting on an asset to the extent that you have data, just like you're sitting on the asset to the extent that you own an oil field. But then once you use that data to make your predictions, essentially you've extracted the value of the asset, and it gives you a one-time bump, but it doesn't give you sustained competitive advantage. Like oil, data burns when it's used, in effect. The way to get a sustained competitive advantage from data is something different, which is you need to use the data to allow you to collect more data. It's the feedback loop that creates advantage, not the data you have today, but your ability to use the data you have today to generate new data tomorrow. That feedback loop can give you a continual leg up on your competitors. The last complement, and I think the most important and in some sense the most human, is what we call judgment. Judgment is the ability to know which predictions to make and what to do with those predictions once you have them. To get your head around what judgment really means, we'll go back to some science fiction. Okay, so anyone here see the movie I, Robot? A few of you. It's a fine movie, and it has a great scene. Okay, in that scene, so here, the movie, Will Smith is the protagonist in this movie, and he hates robots, and it's called I, Robot, and you can sort of see how things are going to play out. And so there's this flashback scene about why he hates robots. And he's in a car accident with a little girl, and their cars are sinking into the water. And it's pretty clear that both Will Smith and this girl are about to drown. And then a robot comes along and saves him and not the girl. And that's why he hates robots. He thinks the robot should have saved the girl and not him. Then he does something that's very interesting that you can do with a machine that you can't really do with a human decision, which is he audits the machine. He figures out, hey, why did that robot save me and not the girl? And he learns that the robot predicted that he had a 45% chance of survival, and that girl only had an 11% chance of survival. And so the robot saved him and not the girl because he had a higher chance of survival. The robot's prediction was 45% versus 11. Then he goes on to say 11% was more than enough, and a human being would have known that. That's a statement about judgment. That's a statement about the relative value of different things. If you are deploying prediction machines, you need to be very clear about what you value. And you need to be clear in advance, because you're running the prediction machine, the prediction happens, and then a decision has to be made about what to do with it. 45% versus 11, he is saying something very specific. He is saying that that girl's life is worth more than 4 times his life. For it to be the right decision to save the girl and not him, there is a very specific relative value of that girl's life versus his. That's judgment. So, when you understand that what's changed is just prediction, and prediction's useful because it helps you make better decisions, the next question is, well, how do you use it to make better decisions? And the vast majority of the time, we can think about AI as a tool to help us with particular tasks. It's going to make productivity incrementally more efficient. It's going to help you serve your customers incrementally better in a wide variety of places. So when I think about the startups that we've worked with or the big companies that use AI, for the most part, they use it to incrementally improve productivity. Here's what they do. They go through their workflow, and they say, OK, here's the different decisions in our workflow. Within those decisions, there's some prediction tasks. And so we're going to drop an AI in for those prediction tasks within the decisions. And that'll replace the human or augment the human. So for example, when we heard about Goldman Sachs embracing automation, there was a scary headline in terms of how they were doing this. The scary headline was, at the height of its equity trading desk, they had 600 traders, and today there's only 2. What that really meant, so don't cry for the people at Goldman Sachs, because as far as we can tell, there's more people working at Goldman Sachs today than there were back then. They're just not at the cash equity trading desk. What's happened is they've automated certain parts of their workflow, which has created new opportunities elsewhere. So what they look at their workflow, they say, okay, there's 146 steps, for example, when we do an IPO. And in step number 132, we figured out we can put an AI in there. We can put a machine in there and automate that task. That might often creates new opportunities in step number 131, 133, before and after. And as the company gets better and better and better, the whole throughput of the workflow goes up because they better serve their customers, and that gives them even more customers. So when we hear about Facebook and Google and Amazon and various startups implementing AI, for the most part, this is as tools for tasks. And if you want to get started, a useful tool for you to figure out which AI tools work in your organization is what we call our AI Canvas. And the AI Canvas is a way for technicians to communicate with business people about prediction technology. So it's a way for people who like to think in coding and math to talk to people who have no idea how to think in coding and math by framing it as, what's the thing you're trying to predict? What are the different kinds of data you need to make that prediction? What are you going to do with that prediction? If your prediction is right, how much better off are you going to be? If your prediction is wrong, there's a false positive, and you make the wrong decision, how bad is that going to be? You work through this canvas back and forth to build AIs within your organization. Now, as I said, for the most part, it's tools for tasks. But every once in a while, an AI or technological change generally can change strategy. For example, if you wanted to look something up 30 years ago, say 1990, what would you have done? You would have gone to the library, right? And yet, if you went to your local librarian and said, what do you think the most exciting company in the world is going to be doing 30 years from now? I bet you not a single librarian would have said library science. But that's what it was. When search became cheap, we found all sorts of new opportunities for library science, for search, for looking stuff up that we never thought of. It turned out, with cheap search, looking stuff up had huge commercial opportunities. Where when search was expensive, we had to subsidize it in libraries. Cheap search created a whole new industry and transformed the way we look up information. So how does that play out when we think about AI? It's hard. So before we figure out what we can do, let's recognize that disruption, radical transformation of any company through technological change is not easy, and it takes time. So we think about artificial intelligence, machine learning as a general purpose technology. Like computers, like the steam engine, like electricity. And there's this old paradox from 1987, 25 years really after commercial computers started, that everyone seemed to be talking about computers in the 80s, but they didn't seem to be making us better off. They were everywhere but in improving productivity and improving wealth. How was that possible? So Nobel Prize winner Robert Solow asked the question and didn't have an answer. Over the next decade, we figured out the answer. And to figure out the answer, we jump back beyond computers to electrification. This is what a factory looked like before electrification. You can see, this is a garment factory. You can see there's all these things connected to a belt on the top. And that belt is connected to either a steam engine or a water wheel that's outside. And so if you wanted to organize a factory in 1870, you made your most power-intensive equipment near the one engine, near the one power source. And so you organized your factory so that things that required power were near the power source. When we brought in electricity, what happened is they got rid of the old power source and plugged things in. That helped productivity a little because it was cheaper, but not that much. It was only once we figured out, you know what? We can reorganize the whole factory floor. We can now make the workflow so that the inputs come in one side and the outputs come in the other, because the location of the power source no longer has any impact on the workflow because we can always just plug it in. That's what led to the change. And it took a good 50 years for us to figure that out. So technological change, changing the strategy of an organization, fundamentally transforming what you do, can help, and it's good, but it's not easy. But let's think through the potential of prediction technology. Let's think through, let's say we get through all those challenges, where do we end up? I'd like to think this is a thought experiment of turning up the dial. So your predictions now are some percent accurate. You can turn up and make them more and more and more accurate. And start with one particular prediction, which is what Amazon predicts you want. Okay, so Amazon has millions and millions and millions of products in their catalog. And they make a prediction about which of those millions and millions of things you're going to buy. And as far as we can tell, they're right roughly 1 of every 20 times. That's pretty good, if you think about it. With the millions and millions of things, they make a prediction about what you're going to buy, and they're right 1 out of every 20 times. It's pretty good, but it's not transformative. What do I mean by that? Amazon is in the same business that the Sears catalog was in well over 100 years ago. Amazon is a catalog company. They are a really good catalog company, but they are a catalog company. What they do is they provide you with an online catalog. You look through that catalog, select what you want, they send that information to the warehouse, and the warehouse then ships it to your door. Better prediction helps them, but it helps them become a better catalog company. Now let's play out what it means to turn that dial. So instead of 5% accurate, it's 15 or 30 or 50 or 70. At some point, their predictions will be good enough that it's not worth it for them to wait for you to order. At some point, their predictions are going to be good enough that they'll ship it right to your door, and then you'll open it at your door. They don't have to be 100% accurate, but their predictions are good enough, they're going to get a big enough share of your wallet that they're going to invest in infrastructure to deal with returns. And so instead of shopping on their website, then shipping, with better prediction, they could move to a model of shipping, then shopping. Now, I don't know if this is really going to happen at scale, I'm going to be clear, but I do know they've thought of it, and they've been thinking about it for a while. Here is a patent from 2013 on anticipatory shipping from Amazon. Whatever industry you're in, you can think about these opportunities. What does it mean for prediction to get better and better and better. So think about HR, human resources. When you talk to human resources people about AI, they usually start with, we want to know how we can deal with the coming issues in AI because we know there's all these other people in the organization whose jobs are going to be changed because of, because better prediction, this technology is going to affect some of their jobs. And that may or may not be true. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And then they go on to say, you know what, but we are human resources. We don't have to worry about this because our job is fundamentally human. And then my co-authors and I, if we look at each other and say, well, should we tell them about what's going on in human resources? And we say, well, okay, maybe we better sort of level with them a little bit. We say, well, look, think about the workflow in human resources. Most of what HR people do today is prediction, right? Your job in HR is to, maybe even more than any other aspect of an organization, right? Your job is to predict who's going to succeed in the organization, and then predict who's going to stay on retention, and in some sense then predict who's toxic and who's making the organization worse. That's much of the HR workflow. There's a mentoring side of HR that is absolutely not prediction, but the hiring and retention aspects of HR, that's prediction. And so think about a better HR process. Well, let's start with thinking about the current HR process. Okay, so you know you need to hire somebody for something. So someone from elsewhere in the organization comes into HR and says, you know what, we need somebody for this. Okay, HR says, great, and they post a job posting. The job posting goes up. They hope people apply. People do. They're very happy. They screen through the resumes. They create a short list. They interview. And then they hire. And then hopefully the person they hire turns out well. Okay? That's the process. And that process takes, depending on how you count and how effective your organization is, somewhere between 1 and 6 months. And it can be much more. What does better prediction mean for HR? It means two things. First, a lot of those steps are prediction steps. Why post a job? Why screen through resumes? Why interview? Why all that? It's to hone in your predictions. If you really knew what you want and you had a good prediction, you could maybe even just go to LinkedIn or a similar data set, maybe much richer, predict how good each of those people would be in the job that you have open, and just hire them, right? Don't bother with all those steps, or don't bother with most of those steps. Just go say, look, transform HR to say, okay, you know what? You're the best fit for my organization. You're hired. No application process, no nothing. And then you can go even further, which is why wait for someone in your organization to know that you need to hire somebody? To really think probabilistically, to really recognize the benefits of prediction, within your HR organization, you should be forecasting, you know what? I see what's going on in this part of the organization. I think right now there's a 20% chance they're going to need someone with these skills. That's high enough that we should start investing in getting the hiring process going. Oh, now there's a 60% chance that we're going to need those skills. Let's start bringing in people for interviews. Right? Better prediction can change workflows, can change processes, and transform a part of your organization. This is true in medicine, too. What does your primary care doctor do? Or in particular, put differently, why did your primary care doctor go to all those years of school relative to your pharmacist or your nurse or your lab technician? Or for that matter, your social worker. Why? Because they're good at prediction. That's fundamentally how we screen people into medical school and how we reward them. Diagnosis is prediction. As machine diagnosis gets better and better and better, the role of the doctor will change. Yes, doctors do all sorts of other things that aren't diagnosis. But it's not clear that the way we screen to hire doctors is really about those things. Yes, doctors deal with emotional distress. They counsel people. They help people navigate a system and all that. But that's not what we train doctors to do. They just end up doing it. Maybe we'd be much better off having social workers in those jobs, or just totally transforming the way we think about medicine. Once we get prediction better and better and better, we can reframe these old problems. We can change industries so the definition of a doctor becomes totally different. And whatever industry you're in, whatever you do, you can work through this transformation. What does it mean in my industry as prediction gets better? How can I better serve my customers? How can I better work with my suppliers? What aspects, what do I do badly? I don't even think about doing badly, but what do I really do badly because of uncertainty? And what can I do better as I reduce that uncertainty? Thank you. I think we have.
So we have a couple mic runners coming around. If anybody would like to
Time for
ask
questions.
the professor any questions, please feel free. Anyone? Yeah, over here. Do we have a microphone? Great.
So, question about, you had talked at the beginning about your advisory role in the company in which you advise startups. So, I imagine a lot of people, if they come to you with an idea for a business and they want to implement AI in that business, they already have a fundamental understanding about how they're going to implement AI in that business. What do you do with someone that comes to you and says, I have an idea for how to implement AI in a business, but I don't have a fundamental understanding about how to implement AI? Like, where do you direct them for resources or direction as far as that would be concerned?
So in terms of, you know the business really well, but you don't know AI, or vice versa? Okay. So, right, so we have both, right? So in some sense, there's the vast majority of people either know the business really well and don't know AI, or really know AI well and don't know the business. The set of people who can do both is pretty small. So the first thing I do is tell them to read my book. No. The first thing I do is walk through with them why do they think better prediction? Why do they think AI is going to help their business? And so really figure out what it is within the organization that's where the benefit is. And that's once we have our head around that, we go through that. We really go through that canvas. Okay, so here's the thing you're predicting. What will happen if you're right? So this is the judgment. How much better is your organization going to be if these predictions are good? And how big a deal is it to be wrong? Okay. That will give you a sense of whether your prediction is going to move to full automation, or whether you're going to sort of need a human in the loop each time to be checking on things. And so we work through judgment. Then we say, okay, well, with that we can get a sense of an ROI. Hey, if this works and it works well, we're going to make money. The next step is to figure out, is it possible? And so for that, we think through a few things. One, what data do you have to build a machine? And what technical expertise is necessary in order to make a good prediction? Sometimes, so we talk about AI, and we hear what Google and Facebook and these companies are paying their AI scientists, and many people think that's out of reach. But the nice thing about code, especially code created in academia, is that it's open. And so you often don't need that good of a machine learning computer scientist to do what you need to do if you understand your business and what you're trying to accomplish. So you think through, okay, make sure it's clear what your prediction is, make sure it's clear what you're going to do with that prediction, your judgment and the payoff, technological feasibility, and then we can work through a plan to make something happen in terms of thinking, identifying who the right computer scientists, do you need an undergrad, do you need someone with a PhD, these sorts of things, those sort of details. But can you outsource, do you need it in-house, et cetera.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Very interesting talk. I guess one thing you said was the data is the new oil, right? So in terms of the HR example you gave, I mean, I don't see that kind of data being captured as to predict, okay, what kind of skill we need, et cetera. Right?
Okay, so there's opportunities and challenges. So HR data is particularly interesting for a bunch of reasons. So if you are a big company where you do hundreds of hires a year, then you should have data on your applicant pool, the people you hire, and how they did in the organization. What we've seen in the early days is already with a lot of people are using AIs, machine learning, for resume screening. So you have lots of applicants, you got to screen it down, and you can use machine learning to predict. And often what we're predicting is, who did the humans in our organization used to bring in for interviews? So we have 1,000 resumes. We've always had these resumes. The humans brought in these 25. Let's predict who the humans would bring in. Okay, that's data you should have. Now, let's be clear. That data is biased, right? Almost surely, the humans in your organization who are doing that hiring are making their own biased decisions. So Amazon got in some trouble. I don't know if you guys saw this a little while ago, because they were using machine learning on resume screening to predict who they should hire, and the machine was telling them to only hire men. Okay? Why was the machine telling them to only hire men? Because pretty much they'd only hired men. And so they shut down the project, which in some sense is clearly the wrong thing to do, right? So, okay, well, wait, we figured out that our humans are biased. Let's go back to our humans. Seems wrong. Now, I'd like to hope, they're very secretive about this, but I'd like to hope that they recognize that there's something wrong with that logic. But over time, you can then proactively think about ways to collect data to reduce bias. So there's two ways to do that. One is, okay, well, maybe the people hiring were biased, but maybe, hopefully, our organization itself isn't biased. And so instead of figuring out who we hire, let's figure out who gets promoted or who performs well. And that should reduce some bias. Or another is, look, if in the Amazon case, to the extreme, let's say they never hired women. So there's no data on whether women would do well in the company. That's not empirically true, but it's, there's not a lot of data. So let's just have the machine randomly hire people who are high variance, who they don't know whether they're going to be good at. Proactively collect data in places where they don't have good data. This is sort of a variant of what's called reinforcement learning, or what we used to call explore-exploit. And it's a way to sort of collect data and proactively learn so that your predictions get better. We got time for one more, I think?
Yeah, a lot of people are saying out there that the chips that are in the computers for programming the different algorithms and what-if statements to make a machine learning successful haven't really been developed. And right now, they're reaching capacities on some of them, and they're kind of hitting a dead end. Have you come across anything like that?
So there's two. Well, I think there's a piece on old-fashioned, computer chips. We used to be very lazy in innovation in chips. And what I mean by that, we kept doubling. Right, Moore's law worked for such a long time that we kept doubling the amount of transistors in a chip, and we didn't really worry about designing chips for particular purposes. Now, there's some sense that Moore's law is slowing down in the doubling, just you get the limits of physics, how many transistors you can fit on a chip. And so a key solution to that has been to generate and build specialized chips. So in some sense, part of the benefit on the compute side, why we've been able to do machine learning so well, has been the arrival originally of graphical processing units, but then of specialized chips designed for machine learning applications. And that has, to my knowledge, we haven't started hitting the limits on that yet. There's always a limit in what your current generation of chip can do, but that hasn't slowed down. And then there's always the hope that there's going to be some other new massive technology that's going to transform things. So one of the streams that we have in terms of startups at the Creative Destruction Lab is a stream dedicated to quantum machine learning. which is trying to build software companies that do machine learning on quantum computing. And those computers are not commercially useful for the most part yet. But there's some expectation in a few applications they will be in, say, 3 to 5 years. And so that's not that long out when we think about the general stream of. And so there's other innovations, quantum, graphical processing units, et cetera, that are helping with this process.
They have a place called Argonne National Laboratory where they just announced the world's fastest computer, and they're expanding the quantum programming. Right now, all the programming is done with the X and O's, but as you use quantum programming, it makes things a lot more efficient, less hackable, and in order to do all your what-if statements when you're doing algorithms for machine learning. Have you addressed any of that stuff?
Sorry.
Is that in your test lab? You said you referenced something up at University of Toronto, the development lab?
So what we've seen in terms of, so you think about, so machine learning is prediction technology, right? When we think about prediction, it's all about stats. It's all about probabilities, okay? And a useful metaphor to think through why quantum machine learning, like why quantum computers will be useful for certain aspects of machine learning is quantum is probabilistic, right? Schrödinger's cat is alive and dead at the same time. It's not really, but you're just dealing with probabilities. And so the mapping computers that explicitly deal in probabilities, which are quantum computers, to outcomes that are about probabilities, which is machine learning, there's certain applications where that's going to be much more efficient than classical computing, where we have to, classical computers are deterministic. The bit is either 1 or 0. And so what quantum, and so we have to pretend to create probabilities. We have to simulate them. Where with quantum in principle, we could actually make it happen.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I have a round of applause for Professor Goldfarb, please?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Can I have that for you? Great. Okay, so the data that I have, which is based on experience, looking at observation, my tummy, and a modicum of judgment leads me to predict that you are hungry and ready to go and get up. So I'll be very, very brief here. Let's get lunch details up. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry, for the second time. Okay. So thank you again for coming, for spending